Hey guys, so this is the video for your Unit 2 retake. Um, so you'll watch the video. You have to get at least a 70 or above on this in order to retake the test. So if you have not made a 70 or above, please let your teacher know so they can reset the video for you. Um, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at question number 1. So it says the graph of a function is shown, and it's wanting us to determine which inequality represents the domain of the function. So the domain, again, is going to be it's pertaining to the x-axis. So the x values. And whenever we're defining our domain, we want to look at the left and the right sides of our box. So the left and right boundaries. So I'm going to draw a line through my left boundary and a line through my right boundary. And off to the sides, I'm just going to state what those values are. So the left side is going to be at -6, and the right side is at +8. Now, we see that there's a closed dot on our left boundary, so that's going to be less than or equal to. And that on the right side of our boundary, there is an open dot, which is going to be less than. So these are our two values that are defining our domain. And it's wanting us to determine which inequality represents this. So it wouldn't be A because this is not all real numbers. It's not infinity. So it's not A. B is all real numbers greater than -6 and less than 8. So yes, we do want all the numbers greater than -6 and less than -8. But if we look right here, we have an equal to. So it needs to be greater than or equal to -6 and less than 8. So it's not B either, but if we look at C, C would be the correct choice because I want all of the values that are greater than or equal to -6 or less than 8. So I want all the values in between those two numbers. Let's look at number 2. So 2 is asking us what is the domain of the function shown. Well, first of all, determining whether this is a discrete or a continuous function. It's discrete. So with discrete functions, we like to list out each value. So for this one, we're going to list out all of our x values since we're looking at the domain. So if we're listing out the x values, it would be whatever numbers are on your x-axis. So F would be the correct answer choice. For number 3, it's wanting us to find the range of the function. So number 3 is wanting us to find the range, which is going to be our y values or our y-axis. So again, I'm going to get out a highlighter. And this time I'm going to be highlighting the top and the bottom of my box, or my highest and lowest point. So my lowest point is right here at -9, and my highest point is at +8. And I'm going to go ahead and write those down. So at -9 and +8. At -9, we have an open circle. So an open circle means that I'm going to have less than. And then at +8, we have a closed circle, so it will be less than or equal to. So I'm looking for -9, less than x, but it's also less than y, or less than f of x, since we're looking at a function. And then less than or equal to 8. So D would be the correct answer. Let's move down to number 4. So number 4 is, which graph represents a function with a range of all real numbers greater than 4 and less than or equal to 7? So we're looking at the range. So the lowest point needs to be greater than negative 4, and then the highest point needs to be less than or equal to 7. So if we're looking at our lowest point needs to be greater than negative 4. So we see greater than, there's no equal to there, so I'm going to have an open circle at negative 4. An open circle at negative 4. Well, it's not F or H. So it's not F or H because neither of those have an open circle at negative 4. Let's go ahead and scroll down. And if we look right here at G, we have an open circle at negative 4. And then our highest point is also at positive 7. So G would be the correct answer for that one. All right, number 5, it says the graph of an exponential function is shown on the grid below. Based on the graph, which statement about the function is true? So let's go ahead and, based on this graph, state our domain and range. And then we'll choose the correct answer. So for this one, our domain, I have a graph with 2 arrows, and I see that my left arrow keeps going and going and going, so that I know that it keeps going to the left and to negative infinity. But then I also, when I'm looking at the right end of this line, it keeps going to the right slowly, but it's going to the right to positive infinity. So whenever my domain is going from negative infinity to positive infinity, that's just another way of stating all real numbers. So that's just another way of stating all real numbers. And then our range is going to be a little bit different because our range, it doesn't go across the x-axis. We're only looking at the negative values on our y-axis. So that means that my range, so my y, is going to be less than 0. Because I want all of the values less than 0. All right, so let's go ahead and pick out our correct answer. So, A, the domain is the set of all real numbers greater than 8. So that one is not correct because we stated above that the domain was the set of all real numbers, or infinity. B, the range is the set of all real numbers. Again, not correct because we stated that the range was less than 0. And if we look at C, the domain is the set of all real numbers. That would be the correct answer choice. And then D, the range is the set of all real numbers greater than 0. That is also incorrect because above we stated that it was less than 0. So number 6. All right, number 6. The table below represents the data collected in an experiment to determine a representative function comparing the angle of incline of a ramp and the distance a model car travels after it leaves the ramp. So what is it wanting us to find? Oh, right here. So we need to evaluate the function for f of 30. So f of 30. So if we remember that inside of the parentheses is going to be our x value. So on this table, I'm going to find 30. And then that means I want its corresponding value that goes with it. So 42 would be the answer. So I'm going to put a positive 42 and then fill in the griddable. All right, so we evaluated the function for f of 30. It was 42, filled in the griddable. Let's move on. Number 7, it's asking me which table represents y as a function of x. All this question is asking us is which one is a function. So if we look at A is not a function because we have 3 repeats. So that is not a function. If we look at B, is B a function? Well, I see that -9 doesn't repeat, 9 doesn't repeat, -2 and 2 also does not repeat. So I'll just make a note off to the side that there are no repeats, or no x repeats. And let's look at the other answer choices. So if we look right here, -4 repeats and 7 also repeats. So C is not the correct answer. And then if we look at D, -8 does not repeat, sorry. -8 does not repeat. -6 repeats, so D is not the correct answer. So that means that B was the correct answer choice because no x repeats. Number 8, so we're given the function 3x plus 1. What is the value of f of 15? If we recall, x is inside the parentheses. So that means I want to take 15 and I'm going to plug it in wherever I see an x. So f of 15 equals 3 times 15 plus 1. So 3 times 15 is going to give us 45 plus 1, which equals 46. So H is the correct answer for this question. Number 9. What appears to be the domain of the part of exponential function graphed on the grid? So what's the domain of this function? So when we look at this function, again, the domain is going to be the left and right boundaries of our graph. So I'm going to use a highlighter to draw a line through my left boundary and a line through my right boundary. And I'm just going to write off to the side what those values are. So our left boundary is at -3, and our right boundary is at +4. So when we're looking at -3, we see that we are drawing a line through a closed circle. So that means I'm going to be dealing with less than or equal to. And then for 4, we're dealing with an open circle, so that's going to be less than. And then x just goes in the middle. So now we just need to find the matching answer choice, which would be A. So let's look at question number 10. It's asking us what is the range of y equals -x² plus 6x minus 2. And it's just wanting the range. So that's going to be our y value. So I can already get rid of h and j because I just want my y value. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and get out our graphing calculator. So we're getting out our graphing calculator. I'm already in the y equals screen. It's, if you need to get there, it's the top left-hand corner of your calculator. And I'm going to type in the function -x² plus 6x minus 2. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the graph button. And I see that it gives me a quadratic graph. So if I look right here, top of my graph is right here. That means that is the highest point I can go. So if we look, that's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the top of my graph is at 7. And I'm wanting all of the values greater than 7 or less than 7. So if I wanted greater than 7, my graph would be going that way, but it's not. My graph is going less than 7, so all of my values are going to be less than or equal to 7, which would be answer G. So we would want all of the values less than or equal to 7. Number 11. Number 11. It's asking us which representation does not show y as a function of x. So which one is not a function? All right, so if we look at A, we're wanting to make sure that none of our x values repeat. So -2, -1, 1, and 4. That is a function, so not one of our answer choices. If we look at B, we see that 2 repeats and then 3 repeats. So B would be the correct answer choice because those 2 x values repeat. Number 12. So number 12, we're looking at the total cost in dollars to buy uniforms for the players on a volleyball team can be found using the function C equals 34.95U plus 6.25, where U is the number of uniforms bought. There are at least 8 players, so there are at least 8 players, but not more than 12 players on the volleyball team. What is the domain of the function for this situation? All right, give me just a second. All right, so if we were looking at this function, so C equals 34.95U plus 6.25, well, we can't really have a continuous function, because if I was to have a continuous function, that would mean I would be including all of the values between each player, and I can't have part of a player. I have to have a whole player, that way I can have one whole uniform. So I have to be counting by whole numbers. So it's wanting the domain, and for this one, the domain is going to be the number of uniforms, because the more uniforms we have, the more money it's going to cost. So if I'm starting right here at 8 uniforms, there are at least 8 players, but not more than 12. So I want all of the values, all of the whole numerical values in between 8 and 12. So that way I'm going to have separate points slowly going up. That means my domain would be all of the numbers in between 8 and 12 just listed out, because for this type of function it would be a discrete function because I can't include half of a person or part of a uniform. So that's why we only need whole numbers in our answer. Number 13. Number 13, the graph of the quadratic function f is shown on the grid below. Which of the following best represents the domain of f. So I'm looking for the domain. And if we recall, the domain of a quadratic function, so the domain of a quadratic function will always be infinity. Because if we look at our starting point on this graph, I'm slowly going to the left forever and ever and ever. So I'm going to negative infinity. And then again, if we start at the starting point of our graph, or the minimum value, I'm going to slowly go to the right forever and ever and ever to positive infinity. So the domain of a quadratic function is going to be all real numbers. All right, 14, we're given a function 9x plus 6. What is the value of f of 2/3? So again, your x value is inside the parentheses. So I'm going to take that 2/3 and plug it in wherever I see x, which would be f of 2/3 equals 9 times 2/3 plus 6. And I can take this right here and plug it directly into my calculator and press enter. That way there's not really a whole lot of work that I'm having to do. Let me get rid of this. So we'll get out of our graph, and I'm going to type in 9 parentheses alpha y equals enter to get a fraction, so 2/3. We need to right arrow out, close parentheses, and then add 6. Press enter and we get 12. So 12 would be the correct answer for this function. So it was positive 12. And then fill in the griddable like so. All right, moving on. So let's look at 15. 2 more questions and then we'll be done. So 15, it's asking what is the domain and range of f of x equals -48. So like any other graph, I'm going to go ahead and, or any function, I'm going to graph it. So let's go ahead and go to y equals. I'm going to clear this out and type in -48. -48. And I'm going to go to zoom. Oops. Ignore me. Zoom fit. We're going to go to zoom fit. I want this to fit in my graph. Oops. Ignore me. We're going to figure this out together. So, if I was to graph this, I only want to look at the negative values. So let's go ahead and graph it. And I see that my graph is down here at the bottom going through -48. Because that is the number that it's going through. You can count each tick mark if you want. It will be going through -48. And if we look right here, it keeps going to the left and to the right. So if it keeps going to the left, we're going to -infinity. And if it keeps going to the right, we're going to positive infinity. So my domain is going to be all real numbers. So the domain is all real numbers. And then your range. Well, if we look at this graph, it's not going up, it's not going down, it's just staying at a flat, constant rate at -48. So that means our range is going to be -48 forever. So if we look at our answer choices, we said our domain was infinity, which is all real numbers. And then our range was just negative 48, because that's the only number it can ever be given this function. So the correct answer choice for this one would be D. And then the last question that we're going to look at is number 16. So number 16 says a golfer hits a golf ball from a tee box that is 6 yards above the ground. The graph shows the height in yards of the golf ball above the ground as a quadratic function of x, the horizontal distance in yards of the golf ball from the tee box. What is the domain of this function? So if we just look at this picture, so basically everything that was given to you in that word problem is useless. This is what's important. This and the picture or the graph. So it's asking us what is the domain of the function. Well, that is going to be all of our x values. So we want the starting x value, which is 0, and we want the ending x value, which is 230. So I want all of the values that are in between 0 and 230. We just took those two values and plugged them into our interval notation and got our answer, which is F. So again, if you get a 70 or above on this video, you can retake your test, just let your teacher know. If you did not make a 70 or above on this video, you need to let your teacher know so they can reset the video for you and you can get another chance at being able to retake this. But that is all I have for today, so good luck.